Hi, thanks again for joining for DCI's latest EEO-1 Component 2 update. Thought it would be fun to share a little bit about the NILG, so the National ILG Conference that took place in Milwaukee last week, and then give another interesting FAQ as well as a few reminders that are important for the coming weeks. So Component 2 was not a big topic at NILG, but it certainly, there were questions and it got touched on. Vicki Lipnick actually gave a plenary session the second morning of the conference, which was really nice, and she did a nice actually recap of how we got to where we are right now in all the way from the judge's ruling to the decision to require 2 years of data being filed and the EEOC selecting 2017 and 2018, complete with reminders. She was very clear, as were other EEOC representatives, that, employers absolutely must file by September 30th and to reach out if they have questions, but there is no ambiguity in that that is a set requirement to get both of those years filed by September 30th. So both 2017 and 2018 by September 30th this year. So it was great just to hear that again from her. Dr. Chris Hafer, which I think we've talked about a little bit, the chief data scientist at EEOC, has certainly been involved in getting, Component 2 live and working with NORC. He actually had a session about the modernization of kind of survey and data at EEOC. So again, not specifically on Component 2, but it was great to hear how he is really making those updates. And one thing that he did speak to about Component 2 is to reaffirm that there will not be automatic extensions. Folks were already asking if they could get an automatic extension apparently on Component 2, and he said that that should not be expected. He didn't necessarily say that there would be no possibility for extensions. There's always extenuating circumstances, certainly for employers, but there is no plan, nor is there a plan now, nor do they expect there to be a plan for employers to get automatic extensions, kind of no questions asked, an automatic 30 days or anything like that. So please don't be counting on that in order to get your filing in. So those are my big takeaways as far as Component 2 is concerned from NILG. And now just, like I said, I wanted to give a little bit of an update on FAQs. As you all know, every week, even multiple times a week, they are adding FAQs based upon the help desk questions that NORC and EEOC are receiving, which is really great, but it can be difficult to keep track of because they're not necessarily flagged with like a new symbol. So certainly, again, just keep periodically checking back. But when I was taking a look this week, one that caught my eye that I believe is new is there's an FAQ or two that speak to questions of how do you handle if you have an employee on your snapshot that you are using for the filings that part of the year they were not US based, or how do you handle if they switched entities? So two entities owned by the same parent company being filed together, but so always an employee essentially of the parent company, but at one part of the year, they were an employee of Entity A under the parent company, and by the end of the year, they're an employee of Entity B under, again, that same parent company. And really the heart of the responses to both was that, the important thing to remember is that your snapshot should include US-based employees. It should include kind of all entities under the parent company, so make sure that employee is still an employee of the parent company, is still an employee in the US at the end of the year. You should be filing for them. Now, are you required to piece together data between two entities if for some reason you didn't have access to it? Not necessarily. You would include a note similar to if they were an acquisition. So it just depends on how you can handle that as far as pulling hours and W-2 data. Same thing, US. Obviously, you're not going to have W-2 data for the non-US part of that employee's career if they truly were an international employee and their decisions and payments were not happening in the US. So you're not required to pull international data, translate it, and kind of include it in what you're filing. So just stay true to your W-2 filings. If you are filing for a employee that switched entities and you have the W-2 earnings for the entire year, if that's how it kind of is able to be pulled out based upon the parent company, well, then you also want the hours worked for the entire year, right? Because that's the heart filing, you want to make sure that those are being consistent. But again, these FAQs are pretty employer friendly, so figure out what you have access to, and then if you don't have access to particular points, include a note. So I thought those FAQs are really useful. And then with that, I just wanted to give everyone a few reminders. So as I'm sure most employers, especially large employers, are aware, the batch upload feature is not yet available. The website specifically says mid-August. I had seen August 15th previously in an EEOC update, but the website does say mid-August, so we're counting on the 15th, but kind of right around there is what we are expecting. So right now you can log in, you can start doing the manual kind of questions, filling out the parent company information, answering some of those initial questions. You could even input your numbers manually if you choose to do so, but if you are doing the batch upload, you'll need to wait for that piece of it. And related to kind of logging in and filling out parent company information, starting to answer questions, make sure you read, as you go along, because there are explicit notes on those pages, like when you're filling out parent company name and address and tax ID. It specifically says, that if you hit save and continue and kind of move on with your filing, you cannot go back and edit that information. So if you're not quite sure if you have the right tax ID, for example, double check that, or the spelling of a part of your parent company name, whatever it might be. Make sure you're comfortable with that. Hopefully everyone is before moving on. A couple other mentions I want to say is that DCI will be kind of co-presenting a webinar in about 2 weeks on Component 2, kind of pulling together a lot of these updates and partnering with a legal partner as well, so you can get a lawyer's perspective. So we'll be advertising that in the next couple of days to a week, so keep your eyes out for that. And then the last thing I'll say is I assume a lot of the folks tuning in are federal contractors and are also required to file the VETS 4212, so don't forget about that. You still need to file that this year. That deadline is September 30th, so the system is open as of August 1st, so you can log in and start working towards your VETS filings as well, because it's certainly going to be a busy month and a half or so until September 30th. But that's all we have for you today, and we'll be providing some more updates next week. And again, if you have questions, feel free to send them in, and we appreciate you tuning in. Thanks.